demande Thomas Alfredson. Ce sera François de Chrysalis, donc le distributeur du film pour la France. Donc voilà, on l'applaudit aussi.
So to start with, I would like to say thank you for coming here. It's a great honor to be in this lovely city of yours. And thank you to Ronan and your lovely crew here at the theater. It was quite impressive, this cinema. Perfect projection and perfect sound. You're not spoiled with that. Yes, it's a very unsexual story. And it's about sort of pure innocent love before sexuality comes in your life and complicates things. I think it's one of the strongest elements in this story that it is. These two people, they don't care about their presences, how they look, if they are a boy or a girl, or if she's a vampire or not. They really want to be with each other, and it's a kind of love a love experience you could have in this age.
Is it romantic?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, this story is very much narrated through Oscar's point of view, and I don't know if you thought of that, but his eyes are on this level. Maybe it's like on 140 centimeters something. So all the shots are taken mainly from his eyes' height, and as a consequence of that, it is his look upon adults in his surrounding. And the adults are always present one way or another, but their heads are turned away. So that is one theme in the story that is very close to contact. It's very close to love. Love is possible, contact is possible, but it is not possible if you're turned away. And this is his experience of adults. They are not evil, but they're sort of arrogant and uninterested. The novel is like 460 pages long, and I think a usual mistake when you do a film from a book is that you try to get a little of everything, and it tends to be very minced. We had this idea of taking out as much as possible and concentrate on just one storyline, which in this case was the story of the two children. The book has several other storylines which we left out. And the work was very interesting, and it took nearly 2 years to complete it. And it was a good thing that it was like a good wine on the shelf. Mm-hmm. In the book there is you follow the bullies at home too, and follow their lives. And there is also a police story, which I didn't think was necessary, and also the older guy Håkan, the blood provider to Eli, he becomes a living dead, which is a quite big thing in the book, which we left out. Well, the Swedish title, Let the Right One in English, is originally a quote from a Morrissey song, which is called Let the Right One In. And it also reflects the fact that the vampire has to be invited into a home or into a house, but also that the Oscar lets the right one into his heart.
C'est un très beau titre, Let the Right One In. Nous, qui distribuons le film, on a été confrontés à un vrai problème de traduction. Parce que si vous pensez à laisser entrer les bons, laisser entrer le juste, laisser entrer la bonne personne, on voulait absolument pas que ce film, sur le titre, soit une autre comédie dramatique ou un titre comme d'autres. Et vous voyez, à cette date-là, on a Élève libre, L'autre, des titres qui... On a voulu trouver un label, un titre fort que les gens retiennent. On n'a pas voulu garder Let the Right One In non plus, parce qu'en français, un titre anglais d'un film suédois, on trouvait ça incohérent. Et puis Let the Right One In, personne ne comprend en France, peu de gens. Donc on a choisi de prendre Morse parce qu'il parle en Morse, parce qu'il y avait des sonorités qui étaient proches de morsure, etc. C'est un peu tiré par les cheveux. Et je vous assure que les gens détestent le titre ou qu'ils adorent, tout le monde s'en souvient. Donc ça a été finalement un choix, voilà, on a fait ce choix-là.
This book is very, except for the vampire, of course, it's a very autobiographical book from Mr. Lindqvist, who wrote this. He is Oscar is his alter ego, and he has written something a very good sentence in the end of the book, that is, all this has happened, but not in this way. Because this kind of story is very fragile. If you start scratching on it, or putting too much light on it, it will break into pieces. You know, for instance, why doesn't the police come, or why don't they break into the hospital and steal blood, and so on. So I found out that it was a good thing to tell this in a past tense, because it was easier to make it believable. When I do the casting process, I like to not have the image about how people look like, but much more try to understand what kind of energy they have. So I tried to find out what kind of animals they would be if they were animals. Okay, so in this case, I had this fantasy of Oscar being a goat, and Eli being a falcon. So that makes my mind much more free when I choose the actors, not by some ridiculous idea about how they should look, but what kind of energy they are supposed to give. I'm quite experienced in working with children. I have made several films and television with children, and I have developed a technique of which I call to deconstruct the story in small pieces, and you really cannot give the whole responsibility of a whole characterization to a 12-year-old kid, because it's too heavy to give to a small kid. As an example, I could tell you about a little sequence that we took out from the film. It is, number one, it's an image of Oscar walking a street. He looks very sad. 2, he's looking into this shop window and he sees a lot of candy. And he looks in his pocket for if he has any money, and the pocket is empty. Number 3, he is sitting on his bed, eating a lot of candy, and he's surrounded by candy paper. Number 4, he is throwing up in the toilet, and his mother is banging the door. Okay. So when this is all put together, this sequence will tell you this is a very lonely kid. He has no money, and he obviously steals the candy, and he has a sort of eating disorder, and he doesn't tell his mother about it. That is the consequence of the sequence. So, but when you do this, you don't record it sequentially. You do it in small pieces over several weeks' time, and it's not useful to a child to describe the whole sequence, what to do with it, or what not to do with it. But you become very practical. You say, okay, you're walking the street and you look very sad. You stand in front of this shop window and you have no money, or you're eating all this candy. So you try to isolate those little everyday kind of images to something that they can understand, and try to play around it each and every situation. But they don't have the whole the addition of it. And in this kind of thinking, because of this method, I don't let the children read the whole script beforehand, and I just tell them mutually to them. I read it, I tell it to them from my mind very shortly, and then they weren't allowed to read it from paper either, so I gave it to them every day on the set, reading it loud to them, so they learned by ear rather than by eyes, so it wouldn't get so sort of mechanical. So in this way, I will take a lot of the responsibility from their shoulders, because it's really too heavy for these little children to carry that for themselves. That was a very long answer to a short question. Well, it was kind of hard to produce it, because this is, for Swedish terms, a quite expensive film. A normal Swedish budget would be around like 2 million euro, and this was made with 3 million euro. So that took us quite a while to get those final 1 million euro. And yeah, it took over 2 years to finance it. But then, of course, it was producing it and making it was quite difficult, because nearly everything is made in real cold in the very north of Sweden in extreme temperatures. So this was I would not recommend it to you if you're planning to do a feature film in minus 30 degrees. 54. No, I never use other films as reference when I prepare for a movie. I try to inspire myself through music or literature or music or other stuff. I think it's really meaningless to watch other filmmakers' films when you are supposed to do the film yourself. Too many filmmakers do that, and it's really uninteresting. This is my first in this kind of genre. I'm most acquainted in Sweden for doing dramas and comedies, so I'm very uneducated in this tradition. I always do stuff that I have full control over, so yes, this is what I was expecting, and then the audience isn't always have the same opinion, of course, but I do stuff that I finalized in a way that I want. So yes, well, I get acquainted to the material as deep as I can, this very specific material, but not to any references. and I choose my labor with my heart and my gut feeling. Well, you always use the things you know. You reference to things you know. The more specific you are, the more universal it gets. That's a very strange equation. The clothing designer came to me and asked, should we have this jacket or this jacket? And I said, oh, that jacket. It was so special. It was very fashionable, and I had one myself. And if you are very specific, it gets ryggrad. Yeah, this a skeleton.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yes, why not? Maybe I would like to do something quite different as my next film, but why not? It was very interesting to explore this world. Yes, I have a particular idea of this because we were me and the photographer. We really tried to express sense in the images. So we thought that in their apartment, the vampire apartment, it would be a very bad odor. And how would we try to express bad odor in an image? And I think it's a sweet and rotten, and it's also part of the Swedish winter. When winter strikes this hard, as the landscape in this film, everything dies, and I know a lot of people in Sweden, they ask themselves, who the hell came to the idea to come to this place in the beginning, 10,000 years ago, because it's so cruel, this climate, and everything dies. Heating is artificial, food has to be imported, lightning has to be artificial, everything is artificial, and I was trying to find a way to have a contrast of this sort of dead landscape, very beautiful but very dead landscape outdoors, and what happens when you come in, when the odors come alive and the light comes alive. Well, she has. They are very subtle, but they exist. I didn't want, the very Hollywoodish, or what you will call those extra teeth. But she has some extra teeth, but they're very subtle, and they give a little, if you look carefully, little bulb on the lip. No, my intention was to find a way to tell this particular scene in one shot without really seeing what happens above the surface in the swimming pool. Then it obviously is some kind of macabre humor with these body parts, but I think you have a very good French expression, les extrêmes se touchent, that the very funny things are very close to very serious or very macabre things.
Question co-imposée. La musique de fin qu'on entend, donc Flash in the Night du groupe Secret Service, comment vous avez eu l'idée de la placer à ce moment-là? Ça reste très longtemps dans la tête.
Okay, this song is very typical for this period, and it has some kind of claustrophobic sound and feeling to it. Secondly, the singer and the songwriter is a personal friend of mine, so it's a sort of homage to him, or a little blink to him, or flirt to it. Finally, I will give you a little behind-the-scenes story before you go. This was an example of how reality and fiction meet in a very macabre way. We had this scene which was supposed to show Eli when Eli was a boy 200 years ago being castrated. And I really didn't want to show the whole image of that because it would be too gross. But I thought that if we could make an extreme close-up of a knife cutting through skin and blood coming out of the cut. So then I talked to the makeup woman about this, that I wanted to do this shot, and she said, well, this is impossible if you're going to do this so extremely tight. We cannot make skin that looks for real and having blood coming out of the cut. So you have to have, you know, real meat to do it. For instance, like pig's meat. So I said, well, could we arrange that Friday in 2 weeks? We have 1 hour to do this. And she said, okay, well, I get on to it. And suddenly this Friday came, and this guy came to me and said, the pig is here now, and the butcher. What pig? What butcher? What are you talking about? Yeah, for the cutting scene. Is there a live pig and a butcher here? Yeah. You have to have it because otherwise the blood won't come up from the scar. And we had this a pig with a big cancer thing on his head, which was to be slaughtered anyhow. And outside the studio, this butcher stand with his big knife and this extremely sad-looking pig with a cancer ball on his head. And I said, this is too bad karma. I really don't want to be involved in doing this. You have to go home. You have to slaughter this on your responsibility. I don't want this pig to die in front of a film team and a camera. It was really too much. And well, it was good that we left the scene out. Okay, so if you like this film, don't forget to tell your friends. If you didn't like it,
It's my work.
yeah, if you didn't like it, keep it to yourselves. Okay? Thank you.
Bref, on remercie donc Thomas et François